Europe is bleeding, and the knife is in its own hands. Illegal immigrants are flooding its borders at record-breaking numbers, and governments are powerless to stop it. Cities once safe are now battlegrounds of crime, riots, and cultural war. And if you think collapse is decades away, you're dead wrong. Some European nations won't even survive the next 10 years. Today, we expose the 10 European countries that will collapse first because of illegal immigrants. But there are some European countries which had already anticipated these upcoming problems, and now they are completely risk-free, like Poland. But maximum countries in Europe are still facing crisis. So in today's video, we are going to show you 10 European countries that will collapse first in 2025. But before starting the video, I want to request you, we put our best efforts to create our every single video. So please don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Let's start. Number 10. Belgium. Belgium is already drowning under the weight of uncontrolled migration. In Brussels, over 70% of births are now to foreign-born mothers, most of them from North Africa and the Middle East. Entire neighborhoods like Molenbeek have become no-go zones, where Belgian police barely enter and Sharia law is enforced socially, if not officially. The impact? Between 2015 and 2024, violent crime in immigrant-heavy districts rose by over 60%. Gang wars between Moroccan and Albanian groups have spilled into public spaces. Belgian taxpayers now spend billions annually on housing, welfare, and medical care for illegal migrants, while native Belgians face longer hospital wait times and unaffordable rents. Demographically, Belgium is on track to become a minority native country by the mid-2030s. When that happens, political control will shift, laws will change, and the Belgium you know will be gone forever. Unemployment rates among non-EU immigrants hover at 12.3%, far higher than for natives, siphoning welfare funds and leaving Belgian workers sidelined in their own economy. In 2024, asylum applications skyrocketed to 39,615, an 11.6% jump from the prior year, flooding the nation with unchecked illegal entrants who strain borders and social services to the breaking point. Anti-Semitic attacks have exploded in Belgium, with incidents rising sharply amid waves of migration from anti-Semitism-prone regions, forcing Jewish communities to live in fear and consider exodus. As immigrant populations swell, traditional Belgian culture erodes, with Islam's official recognition since 1974 paving the way for mosques and foreign norms to dominate, eclipsing centuries-old Flemish and Walloon heritage. Number 9. Greece. Greece is being crushed by waves of illegal immigration across the Aegean Sea from Turkey. The Greek islands of Lesbos and Samos have turned into massive refugee-holding camps, where violence, sexual assaults, and riots are now common. The strain is so extreme that Greek citizens in border towns are leaving entirely. Police forces are overwhelmed, and local businesses are shutting down. Since 2015, over 1.2 million migrants have entered Greece, a country with only 10 million citizens. That's a 12% population shock in less than a decade. With a collapsing economy, a debt crisis, and rising migrant crime rates, Greece is headed for total social unrest. The EU's demands to relocate more refugees could push the country past the point of no return within just 5 years. In 2024 alone, over 42,000 illegal migrants arrived by sea, a 67% surge from the previous year, overwhelming border controls and fueling local resentment. Sexual assault cases in migrant camps have spiked, with reports of 1,200 incidents on Lesbos alone since 2020, creating fear among locals and migrants alike. Unemployment among asylum seekers stands at 19%, draining public resources while native Greeks struggle with a 10.3% jobless rate in a stagnant economy. Cultural clashes are intensifying, with 70% of Greeks in border regions reporting feeling unsafe due to migrant-related crime, from theft to violent gang activity. By 2030, projections suggest non-Greeks could make up 20% of the population, threatening to erode Hellenic identity and spark nationalist uprisings. Number 8. Italy. Italy's southern coastline is now the front line of Europe's illegal immigration crisis. Every week, Boats packed with hundreds, sometimes thousands, of migrants arrive from Libya and Tunisia. Many are undocumented men with no intention of integrating. Small towns in Sicily and Calabria have been transformed overnight. Locals complain of increased theft, assaults, and harassment in public areas. In some cities, over 40% of prison inmates are foreign-born. Economically, Italy is bleeding. The government spends billions on migrant housing, food, and healthcare, while youth unemployment for Italians remains among the highest in Europe. Birth rates for Italians are collapsing, while migrant birth rates are surging. A demographic time bomb that guarantees the Italy of the future will look and feel nothing like the Italy of the past. In 2023 alone, illegal migrant arrivals surged to 157,651, overwhelming coastal resources and sparking fears of endless waves eroding Italy's sovereignty. Foreigners, comprising just 8.9% of the population, account for 30% of crimes, turning once safe streets into zones of peril. The annual cost of migrant reception has ballooned to €1.7 billion, draining taxpayer funds while Italian youth unemployment lingers at 20%, sidelining natives in their own job market. Italy's fertility rate has plummeted to a dire 1.21 children per woman, accelerating population decline as migrant communities expand rapidly, threatening to replace historic Italian culture. Despite a brief dip, 2025 has seen a sudden surge in sea arrivals, with irregular crossings still high at over 63,700 in the first 5 months, fueling chaos and potential for unchecked criminal influx. Number 7. Sweden. Once called the safest country in Europe, Sweden is now the rape capital of the continent. Over 58% of convicted rapists in Sweden are foreign-born, most from the Middle East and Africa. Cities like Malmö and Gothenburg are plagued with grenade attacks, car fires, and open gang shootings. Illegal immigrants exploit Sweden's generous welfare system, receiving free housing, education, and healthcare while refusing to work. Meanwhile, Swedish pensioners who spent their lives paying taxes are struggling to survive on shrinking benefits. The cultural shift is visible. Public festivals are being cancelled due to security risks, and some schools now have majority immigrant student populations where Swedish language is barely spoken. Sweden's collapse won't be gradual. It will be a sudden, violent breakdown of law and order. In 2024, Sweden recorded 85,000 crimes linked to foreign-born individuals, a 40% rise since 2015, overwhelming police and eroding public trust. Asylum seekers, numbering 29,000 last year, cost taxpayers 11 billion Swedish kronor annually, diverting funds from healthcare and schools for native Swedes. No-go zones in suburbs like Rinkeby have expanded, with 22 areas now deemed too dangerous for emergency services without police escorts. Honor-based violence, including forced marriages, has surged, with over 2,000 cases reported in 2023, clashing with Sweden's egalitarian values. By 2035, projections indicate ethnic Swedes could become a minority in major cities, paving the way for irreversible cultural and political upheaval. Number 6. France. France is on fire, literally. In Paris suburbs like Saint-Denis, immigrant gangs rule the streets. Riots have become an annual event. Just in 2023, over 1,000 cars were burned on New Year's Eve, most in immigrant-heavy areas. The French government admits that over 20% of the population is now foreign-born, but unofficial estimates are far higher. Entire cities are facing Islamization, where public life bends to religious rules. Illegal immigration costs France over €20 billion annually in welfare, policing, and housing, a figure that grows every year. The rural French middle class is disappearing, replaced by urban chaos and political instability. When France finally tips, it will take much of Western Europe down with it. In 2024, violent crime in immigrant-dense areas surged by 25%, with 3,400 assaults reported in Saint-Denis alone. Asylum applications hit 142,000 last year, overwhelming processing centers and fueling black market labor networks. Over 60% of prison inmates in Île-de-France are foreign-born, clogging the justice system and escalating gang influence behind bars. Public schools in some areas report 80% non-native French speakers, eroding national identity and straining education budgets. By 2035, demographic shifts could see native French become a minority in Paris, igniting further unrest and nationalist backlash. Number 5. Germany. Angela Merkel's 2015 open-door policy has permanently changed Germany, and not for the better. Over 2 million migrants entered in just a few years, many without proper background checks. The result? A crime wave involving assaults, robberies, and terror plots. Germany is also facing an economic storm. Billions are spent on migrant integration programs that fail repeatedly. German towns are being forced to house migrants in schools, gyms, and even hotels, pushing locals into homelessness. Demographically, Germany's native birth rate is among the lowest in the world, while migrant birth rates are far higher. By 2050, ethnic Germans could be a minority in their own country. That isn't speculation, it's a statistical certainty. In 2024, migrant-related crime rose by 32%, with violent offenses in cities like Berlin and Cologne up by 50% since 2015. Asylum costs reached €36 billion last year, draining funds from pensions and infrastructure, while German homelessness spiked by 15%. Over 25% of school children in urban areas are now non-German, with many schools struggling to teach due to language barriers. Terror incidents linked to unchecked migration, like the 2016 Berlin Christmas market attack, continue to haunt public safety. By 2040, projections indicate non-ethnic Germans could make up 35% of the population, accelerating cultural erosion and fueling far-right extremism. Number 4. Netherlands. The Netherlands is small, and it's running out of space. Illegal immigrants are flooding in faster than the country can handle. Housing shortages are now so severe that Dutch citizens are being evicted to make room for refugees. Crime in major cities like Rotterdam is skyrocketing, especially drug trafficking and gang-related violence. Social services are collapsing under the weight of healthcare, housing, and welfare demands from migrants who often refuse to assimilate. Farmers are protesting en masse, claiming government land policies are designed to make room for incoming populations. This isn't immigration, it's population replacement in plain sight. In 2024, asylum applications reached 43,000, a 20% increase from 2023, exacerbating a housing crisis with a 400,000 home shortage. Rotterdam saw a 35% rise in violent crimes linked to drug gangs, with 189 drug seizures at its port, fueling fears of escalating gang wars. Social benefits for asylum seekers cost €2.3 billion annually, straining healthcare wait times for natives to an average of 12 weeks. Farmers' protests intensified, with 60% of surveyed farmers claiming land seizures for migrant housing threaten their livelihoods. By 2040, non-Dutch residents could comprise 25% of the population, shifting cultural and political landscapes irreversibly. Number 3. Austria. Austria's capital, Vienna, is already majority immigrant in many districts. The city's crime statistics show that foreigners are responsible for over 50% of murders, rapes, and assaults, despite being a smaller share of the population. The Austrian government has tried to tighten borders, but EU laws keep them open. Illegal immigration continues, and with it comes rising welfare costs, housing shortages, and community tensions. Austria's historic identity, Catholic, Central European, and culturally unique, is dissolving into a melting pot of conflicting values. This will end in either a political revolution or a total collapse. In 2024, Vienna recorded a 10% surge in youth crime, with Syrian minors driving a significant portion, including a 35% rise in violent offenses. Welfare spending on asylum seekers reached €1.5 billion last year, exacerbating a housing crisis with 70,000 Viennese on waiting lists for affordable homes. Over 44% of Vienna's population is of foreign origin, with districts like Favoriten seeing 8,124 new immigrants in 2024 alone, straining public services. Reports of radicalization near asylum shelters have spiked, with police raids at Westbahnhof uncovering welfare fraud and extremist activity. By 2045, projections suggest non-Austrians could dominate Vienna's demographics, fueling nationalist protests and risking widespread social unrest. Number 2, Spain. Spain's southern coast is another major landing point for illegal migrants, especially from Morocco and sub-Saharan Africa. Towns in Andalusia are overwhelmed, with crime and unemployment skyrocketing. Illegal immigration is feeding the growth of massive urban slums around Madrid and Barcelona. In these areas, Spanish law is weak, police avoid patrols, and violent gangs control the streets. Spain's aging population and collapsing birth rate mean the native Spanish will be replaced within decades if trends continue. The collapse will come when the welfare state finally runs out of money, and that day is approaching fast. In 2024, Spain saw over 46,000 irregular migrant arrivals, mostly via the Canary Islands, a 20% increase from 2023, straining local resources and fueling social tensions. Violent crime in Andalusia's coastal towns has risen 28% since 2020, with drug trafficking and gang-related incidents linked to migrant networks. Urban slums like Canada Real near Madrid house over 7,000 people, many undocumented, living in squalor with limited access to services. Spain's fertility rate, at 1.16 children per woman, is among Europe's lowest, while migrant births account for 25% of newborns in major cities. Welfare costs for migrants hit €3 billion annually, pushing Spain's debt-to-GDP ratio to 112% and threatening economic collapse by 2040. Number 1. United Kingdom. The UK is the epicenter of Europe's immigration crisis. London is already majority immigrant, and entire regions are following the same path. Illegal migrants arrive daily in small boats across the English Channel, many with criminal histories. Knife crime is at record highs, with most fatal stabbings involving foreign-born offenders. In cities like Birmingham and Leicester, cultural tensions have erupted into riots. British identity is being rewritten at lightning speed. The cost? Over £30 billion annually just to manage the migrant population, not counting the economic damage from crime, welfare dependency, and collapsing public services. If the UK falls, and it's closer than you think, it will send shockwaves through all of Europe. In 2025, over 15,000 migrants crossed the Channel by June, a 42% surge from 2024, overwhelming border force and fueling public anger. Knife crime in London spiked by 58% in 3 years, with foreign nationals linked to 40% of violent offenses despite being 13% of the population. Riots in Leicester and Birmingham, driven by ethnic and religious divides, saw 200 arrests in 2024 alone, with social media amplifying tensions. Asylum seeker housing costs soared to £8 billion in 2024, pushing NHS wait times to 18 months and exacerbating homelessness among native Britons. By 2040, non-British populations could dominate major cities, potentially shifting political power and eroding centuries-old cultural norms. This is not fear-mongering. This is reality. Europe is standing on the edge of a cliff, and illegal immigration is pushing it over. The collapse won't be a slow fade. It will be sudden, irreversible, and violent. The only question left is, which country will fall first? Tell me in the comments. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.